Did you see this, Gonky?
I
read this
did.
article?
Yeah.
So the U.S. has stages dogfights with AI flown fighter jet, and of course, for the kids at home, this article is probably sufficient, and people are like, "Ooh, yeah." I, on the other hand, have questions, and I'm going to ask you, Gonky, because you're smart. But I have these questions. We'll start off. We'll set it up. So an experimental fighter jet, so to speak, has squared off against an F-16, the first ever artificial intelligence fueled dogfight. So this is what it is. It can fly autonomously, but they didn't obviously do that. They actually had somebody in the jet monitoring it. They just let the AI do it. Note that it's very easy to VID if you're the other guy because it's got a big old honking orange tail. So that helps whoever's fighting it. But it says it fought a Viper. And the successful, it has the X-62 Vista engage in practice aerial combat dogfighting. It stands for Variable In-Flight Simulator Aircraft. So they've taken DCS to the skies.
Yeah.
Services used to test cutting-edge aerospace technology for more than 3 decades. However, now it's time for autonomous flight. They use the AI for warfare and build airman trust and autonomous technology can perform safely and reliably in combat. Until now, it was mostly for like the auto GCAS, auto ground collision avoidance system, which keeps the Viper and the F-35 from crashing when occupant experiences G-induced loss of consciousness, which is good. But within visual range dogfighting, that's brand new. So it represents an important challenge case for the question of trust, said the commandant of the Air Force Test Pilot School. Inherently dangerous. But they went, today's program started by having AI agents, which is what they call the artificial intelligence, control simulated F-16s while dogfighting in computers. Those AI-operated simulated F-16s went 5 for 5 against human pilots. And I talked about this. I've done videos on it. We've had Heron on the Heron flight systems on the channel. We actually did a whole DCS tournament where Sung Ho did a dogfight. The winner actually got to fight, and he won. He actually beat the AI. So there you go. Our only hope for humanity. He's like the South Korean John Connor. But he... But we had them on the channel. We talked about it. We interviewed them. We had a whole great event, and they talked about the learning and stuff. And it was in kind of an explain kind of scenario. And the agents had perfect situational awareness. And I'm going to talk about why that's a thing here in a second. But they had perfect situational awareness. They knew all the parameters that the other aircraft had. So it maneuvered relative to that. And it also flew the Gonky profile where it only did face shots, which an Air Force guy was like, oh, I don't know how to deal with this. So it won. They put this poor guy in the sim, and he had all kind of issues. So anyway, that's how it started. And it's cool that the channel was a part of that in some ways. But in December of 2022 and 2023, they're like, we need to do flight tests, and we want it to go toe-to-toe. So for 2 weeks, they flew against an F-16 in a variety of scenarios, which they don't say what they are, which could mean offensive BFM, where the AI agent starts in like 9,000 feet back, 6,000 feet back, 3,000 feet back, whatever, in an offensive position. They don't say if it's defensive. It sounds high aspect because they go on to say the jets flew aggressively at speeds of up to 1,200 miles per hour. And I don't know if that's closure or each one. They're a little fast if you're doing 1,200 miles an hour on your own, but a 1,200 mile an hour merge actually sounds right. And within 2,000 feet of one another, which is not that close. If, as Gonky and I will attest, usually, I mean, that might be a good like control zone or something like that. But they carried out nose-to-nose passes, which is high aspect basic fighter maneuvers and vertical maneuvering. And the 2 pilots were in Vista's cockpit. Boy, that would suck. Dude, how much would that suck?
I would get sick. 100%.
How much would that suck? Because you're sitting there monitoring whatever screen while this thing's flying BFM. I mean, it sucks having somebody else fly, period. Yeah. Much less the AI that does not care about you.
Yeah, so I mean, the closest I've ever been to that is, you know, having students fly, which is like low quality AI, right? It'll make you sick, man.
So they said that the AI flown Vista performed well and tested a variety of agents with multiple different capabilities, but they declined to say how it went. We don't know who won. The purpose of the test was to demonstrate we can safely test these AI agents, and that's probably because it was controlled. Like everything a test pilot does. I remember, hold on, is there anything else? I'll get to that in a second. But they said one might one day be long range vision so that they can help use BFM. Could also use for the uncrewed collaborative CCAs, can autonomously fly with the Loyal Wingman program. And it's about building trust in the AI. So I have questions, Gonky. And here's the thing. So what we've seen out of this is that it was probably very scripted, and they probably, because everything test pilot related it's not Maverick, going 10.2 and the thing breaks up. It's okay. Today we're going to add 5 knots, and that's your whole test. And today we're going to have 5 more knots, and it's very like structured. There's an engineer. They have flight test engineers that fly with them, stuff like that. There's regiments to it. So I would imagine this was equally regimented. Like, all right, today we'll do high aspect. We'll see if he makes the first turn. We'll see, how it does when I go vertical. Does it even track? Part 2 of the question, because I remember, and I mentioned this because when the F-35 was brand new, and actually one of the first articles I wrote defending Fat Amy, you can believe it, was when the news media got wind of the F-16 fighting Fat Amy, and Fat Amy, got its ass beat. And they're like, well, see, BFM, it lost engagement after engagement. It's like, dude, that they were defensive. It was literally defensive BFM sets, and it was scripted, and they were trying to test different parts of the flight regime of the F-35. It was not mano-a-mano 1v1. Now, granted, would Fat Amy beat F-16 1v1? No. It is not that good of a dogfighter. Everybody I've ever talked to is like, God, it's no. Especially on either side. Like I've got a buddy that's at Nellis right now, and he fights Fat Amy. He's like, dude, were you trying? But I digress. No Fat Amy hate right now. My point is the test stuff is very structured. And my question is, what I would assume is that the F-16s both had some level of telemetry pods, and that telemetry was being fed directly to the AI. Because otherwise, you have to develop a way for it to have human-like sensors. Because what do we have in BFM, right? You have your radar, which as soon as he's over here, no longer does much for you. You have your Mark 1 eyeballs, which is 99%. And you have your experience. You know where they're going to be. Gonky and I have done DCS, and sometimes we don't even look because we're used to setting our neck. That's why to save your neck, you just have to know where they are. And when you turn your look and you just hope that they're there, because, you can't watch them all the way through as you're pulling 9Gs. But for the AI to be like this Terminator style thing, it has to, lose sight, lose the fight. It has to be able to know where that other aircraft is at all times and maneuver in relation to that. Otherwise, it's pointless. So something had to feed it data, which is exactly what happened when we did this with the X-plane trials with Heron Systems, that they were getting fed data. So the human fighter pilot didn't have the data. The AI fighter pilot did, and the AI fighter pilot won. Well, the human wasn't. Anytime you put a human fighter pilot in the sim, they always have trouble because, it's just, as Gonky will attest. But so this is a step, and I think that's why they're talking about it doesn't matter who won, because it's not a realistic, like, AI will win every single time. Well, AI is not going to have perfect sensors. Now, you might be able to develop a perfect electro-optical sensor or something that can track another object throughout the course of 9G maneuvering. You might be able to. They might already have that. I don't know. But something has to be able to solve for range, angles, and closure without the benefit of a radar, because 90% of what we do, you don't have that benefit. Because we even tell, how many times have you told a student, don't do HUD BFM? Stop trying to get the radar lock. Stop trying, take the no lock shot. Because when you rely on that radar, it may work. It's good to have, but you have to be able to fight without it. So I think there's a lot of caveats to this. it's fascinating to me, and I think we're not trying to prove whether a human can out dogfight an AI or vice versa. I think we're trying to prove, can the AI learn the basics so that we can employ them in other realms? Can he be that, or can it be that loyal wingman that I need to go out and die for me, for country, forgotten country? Let it be what goes downrange and gets killed, not the human in the seat. Gonky, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it, man. Who won or lost doesn't really matter at this point, because I think they're just collecting data, right? They're running tests. They're trying to figure this thing out. Now, do I think probably sooner than later will they have some sort of AI drone fighter that can beat me at my peak in BFM? Probably, maybe. And I only say that because I'm not, my favorite way to fly an ILS and an airliner was the autopilot coupled, because it does it way better than I can. And that is just the reality of it. Now, that being said, there's probably up to 50% of the time where, the autopilot, which, when you're talking about commercial aviation, this is kind of old tech, but like, it's like, why is it doing that? Right. So there's not technology. The problem with technology is it does fail, because it is also created by human beings. Human beings make mistakes. Human beings don't make perfect machines. So I'm sure whenever they finally get this thing absolutely, doped out, when everything works, probably going to be unbeatable. But that's in a perfect world. So in this particular case, I think it was, envelope expansion. Just, hey, like you said, let's see what it does here. Let's go up. Let's give it these laws and rules and see how that goes. I think I think it'd be a really fun program to be a part of, just to kind of see like I'm sure it's like, well, let's see what it does. And, you sit there like, I don't know. This is definitely test pilot developmental stuff, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It doesn't translate to headlines.
Yeah.
I think people hear, hey, AI has done this. Okay, well, how did it do? Well, that's not what we did.
Right.
We're very strict in how we do this, because we're not just wasting gas. Because if you can't repeat it, it didn't happen.
And the other thing I'll say is, anytime, like, I read a couple of these articles, and like when it comes to air, it's like, hey, how can the T-38 beat the Raptor? It's like, don't put out there that we beat a Raptor and a T-38. And it's always like, I need to talk to or at least see an article written by an actual fighter pilot who actually fought one of these things before I put any real salt into, hey, this thing can beat people or human beings. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times, like you said, man, the mainstream, or not even mainstream, but just aviation journalism, they'll get bits and pieces from an article and maybe embellish it a little bit. But I think it's cool tech.
Yeah, we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah.
All right.